to What's Your Work Fit is sponsored by Hudson Davis Companies. Start your brand's marketing and communications journey today at hudsondaviscommunications.com and hudsondaviscreative.com. I'm Dan Smolin. I built a successful executive career in marketing and communications before becoming a top headhunter and founding my own executive search firm. Now get this, every day, mainstream media runs stories in which old school bosses and thought leaders frame your work and workplace issues in ways that are often divisive and unmeaningful. And that's just crazy. The time has come for you to answer the question, what's your work fit? So that your work and career fit who you are, how you want to live, and what you want your lasting contributions to be. What's your work fit? It answers your questions and tackles the issues that keep you up at night about advancing your career in this time of workplace revolution. So let's get started. Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome to What's Your Work Fit. I appreciate everybody tuning in live from across North America and around the world. So good to have you here today. I just want to say here in the DC area, we are being inundated with pollen. If I sound a little sniffly and I rub my nose, or worse off, if I sneeze, that's live TV. I did take a Zyrtec about an hour ago, so hopefully it won't be so bad. But before we get to our wonderful guest, I want to make an appeal. If you submit a future show question, you can get, let me put it here, this What's Your Work Fit embroidered baseball cap from me. Again, if we choose your question for a future episode of What's Your Work Fit, we will send you this embroidered cap. It's made in the United States, really good quality. That's it for my soapbox for now. We really enjoy so much our viewer engagement. Here we go. And it really drives our show. Okay, so let's get to things here. I want to welcome Julie Winkle Giulioni. Good morning, my friend. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Dan. I am wonderful. I'm just so delighted to be with you and Gesundheit in advance.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Julie. Julie is a champion for workplace growth and development. She believes that everyone deserves the opportunity to reach their potential, and she supports organizations and leaders who want to make that happen with keynote speeches, consulting, training, and also writing a brand new book called Promotions Are So Yesterday. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Julie. I want to get to our viewer question right off the bat. And it's posed by EJ. That's not their name. They asked for anonymity, which is often the case on this show. I have to respect that, you know. We're dealing with difficult questions, the type of thing that keep our viewers up at night. So if you want to go by an alias, that's completely fine with me. Okay, EJ, let's tell your story. EJ has been in the active workforce coming up on 2 years. They graduated from college 2 years ago. They're a program manager for a 50-person company that provides B2B support services to brands in insurance and the financial industry. When EJ joined their company immediately following graduation from college, they agreed with management that they would learn the ropes of program management, and then they would get to pivot into a more specialized role that involves their loves of marketing and social media. So EJ got a bachelor's degree in marketing with a minor in social media. That's their passion. Okay. EJ says that they've gotten really high marks for the work that they are doing in program management. and also two traditional promotions, I guess you could say, better title and compensation package. Um, and yet they've been told that they are needed to continue in program management. That's the boss's vision for EJ to grow into a bigger leadership role, and it's left EJ torn. They like the boss. Actually, they say they love the boss. They understand that the boss values their talent and their leadership, but they also feel, and this is really key, that they've invested 2 years in their career satisfying the demands of a company and leadership and not their own personal goals, not their work fit. So, Julie Winkle Giulioni, EJ says and asks, why can't my boss and I agree on my next role?
Well, I am thrilled that EJ has brought this up, and probably, and I appreciate your willingness to keep EJ anonymous, but anonymity probably isn't necessary. 80% of the workforce reports that they're not satisfied with the growth opportunities before them. So EJ is right there in a majority, unfortunately. And so appreciate EJ raising the question, because it is easy to suffer and ultimately quit in silence rather than bring this up and process it. So let's dig into it.
Mm.
So EJ has been toiling away for the last 2 years.
Right.
Something that's not, the reason they were put on the planet, that's not serving their souls, but rather serving the organization.
Mm-hmm.
A place where he or she, would they feel like it's time to pivot and start satisfying their needs now. And that, when it comes to development, career development, really becomes the crux of the matter so frequently, is how do we balance serving the needs of the individual and the organization?
Yeah.
Because for sustainability, for either the success of the individual or the ongoing success of the organization, we got to keep that in balance. If we're always taking care of the business, we're not going to be able to keep the good people. If we're always taking care of the people, it may be at the expense of the organization. So striking that balance is really fundamental. So frequently, what I find is when a manager is unwilling to move someone into a different role, it boils down to them being needed in that role. There's a hole, there's a gap, there's someone who's uniquely, prepared for and experienced to be able to do that role in a predictable and effective fashion. And so it's a little scary sometimes for a manager to allow that predictability, that known, to go away and have to deal with the unknown again. And so I frequently will coach people. We kind of I learned growing up in business, make yourself indispensable. That you're really gonna seal the deal. And truth is, we need to make ourselves dispensable. We need to make sure we're bringing others in who can backfill so that we can move on. So that's, one piece of it is just filling a hole in the organization with a known entity that you can trust.
I want to bring in Parminda's comment. And Parminda says, I guess I'm a pleaser, so if I got to the point where my boss and I don't agree on the next role, I'd buckle under and do what they want me to do. How can I overcome my usual pleasing self response?
Oh, Paminda, you are, we are soul sisters here. I feel the exact same way. And we do that sometimes at our peril, don't we?
Yeah.
Please and go along and sublimate what our needs are until we hit that, kind of boiling point where in some cases we just say enough, and I'm out of here, which is in no one's best interest. So the ongoing conversation is really what's key. I was reading a statistic. 20% of the population says that they only have rare or no career conversations with their boss during the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
53% get one conversation a quarter. So clearly we're not talking about our careers, our needs, what that fit is that's going to keep us engaged and satisfied and growing in a way that will keep make me want to stay here. So Paminda, you and I, what we need to do is come clean and say, hey, boss, I love you. I love the mission. I want to support you. I'm a good soldier here.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm here in this role, supporting the organization, how can we infuse some of the things into the envelope of this role that I need to fuel my passion and stay growing and engaged and happy? What kinds of projects, activities, relationships, visibility opportunities might there be, so that while we're taking care of business, we're also taking care of me and my growth?
My friend Nina Farip chimes in and she says, it's important to recognize that priorities will not always line up, which is why clear communication from both parties is crucial to maintaining the relationship. You agree with that?
Totally. I think it all boils down to communication. If we're not having an ongoing thread, I talk about a thread of dialogue around development every day. It's so easy for managers and employees to end up veering off and having very different experiences in the workplace. And that ongoing conversation builds the trust and the rapport that, sort of Paminda and I need to be able to come clean, and helps to ensure that managers and leaders know what we want. I think a lot of times we imagine that they know a lot more than they actually do. And if we're not overt about it, and if we don't repeat that, our messages and our needs can get kind of lost in the shuffle of busyness.
I want to take a step back to my own career experiences, albeit a few years back, which I think are probably what you would describe as so yesterday. So here's the tee up, and I this is not the first time I've mentioned this, Julie. So I was in the world of advertising, which can be very hard on people physically, mentally, and emotionally, because there's so much going on. The tempo is fast, your heart is racing. And I remember fairly early on in my tenure in an amazing company, I got brought in, and I'm underwater. I've got stuff piling up against me. I also have no headcount reporting to me to help me overcome the challenges I have and fulfill my deliverables. I was an account manager. I was involved in managing what was probably the largest account in a very large agency, and I was only 27, 28 years old. So I didn't have a lot of self-confidence around making the ask appropriate to my own need. So here's the tee up. I went to my boss and I said, I need help. I need help because I'm working 80-hour weeks. I can't keep up with everything. The deadlines are coming fast and furious. I feel like I'm in quicksand. I need somebody to come in and help me so that we together can fulfill all these needs. Boss thought it was a great idea. He went to his boss, who really liked me. We were close, he and his boss. We had a lot of affinity beyond the job. So the boss comes back to my boss and says, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give Dan a big title. We're going to bump up his compensation, I don't know, double digits. I don't remember what the number was, but it was significant. And that's what they did. That was the solution that my boss was handed from up on high. So guess what? I was better paid. I had a lovely title, had the nice office overlooking the waterfall at our company. And I was miserable. Why? Because I lost my agency to fulfill the work product needs the way I needed. Ultimately, Julie, and I didn't call it back in the day, it took away my work fit. Is that typical, what I just described, is that typical of the so yesterday promotional frames that people used to work with? And how is it changing now to fit a different reality, perhaps a better one?
Yeah. And, isn't that just a a vivid example of solving the wrong problem.
Yes.
And how frequently do we do that? And well-meaning, generous, and probably that solution was exactly what your boss's boss would have needed
Right.
in order to satisfy his personal fit. And that's where we as leaders frequently fall short, is assuming that what we want is what others want, rather than kind of the platinum rule, do unto others as they want to be done to. So the issue really, my experience has been that the issue boils down to, we have been raised, many of us, to think in terms of work as what we want to be.
Yeah.
The title, the role, that promotion, the office, and the compensation. And where the organizations are going, where the world is going, where we as people are going, is really toward more of a focus on what we want to do, kind of the fit that's so central to the body of work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
When we get into that discussion of what we want to be in the titles, that's where we lose the agency. We have a moment of excitement when that first check hits the bank account, and then it's what we make.
I spent it on a new car, Julie.
Oh, well, that was a nice little bump.
Yeah,
At least you could drive.
I was farther behind financially as a result, but it filled an endorphin rush that I needed.
Exactly. But those endorphins are very short-lived.
Yeah, they are.
And so when we as individuals, with regard to our own career, or when managers try to manage toward that endorphin, those moments in time when we can bump somebody up the ladder, the satisfaction associated with that is short-lived. And so increasingly organizations, in part because of the pressure that we're becoming leaner and meaner and less hierarchical, fewer layers, all of that kind of thing, that there's just not a lot of promotions to give, but partly because individuals, especially after the last couple of years, we're looking for a different kind of relationship with work.
Mm-hmm.
There really is a shift toward, let's stop focusing on what people want to be and start talking about what they want to do. And when we start talking about what they want to do, the fit, the experiences, the relationships, the kinds of contributions they want to make, when we start doing that, then suddenly the opportunities, I think back to EJ, the opportunities to infuse some marketing experiences, being able to touch the social media channels and have an impact, that there would be ways, if we focused instead of on the role that EJ wants, which may or may not be available,
right,
to the kind of work EJ wants to do, probably a way to get flexible and creative and bring some of that in. And so when we start to make that shift as leaders and individuals from being to doing, we have infinitely more opportunities to be able to experience the fit, the satisfaction, the engagement that most of us are looking for.
So I want to ask you about the dialogue that our viewers should keep in mind if they find themselves in a similar situation. Now, I think in EJ's case, they laid it out. They're very good at what they do. They're very good workers, very intentional, very thoughtful, probably on time, probably gets to the office early. I'm not sure. But when it comes to the interaction between them and their immediate supervisor, there seems to be perhaps a hesitancy. And like Parminder says, the policer in them doesn't want to ruffle feathers, right? But there's got to be some ice-breaking ways that we can engage that don't inflame passions in the wrong way, that aren't off-putting. Can you tick off a few ideas for us, Julie, as to how somebody in EJ's position can get to perhaps to yes or closer to yes, and maybe they don't get their ideal, but maybe they negotiate something that fulfills the needs and the desires of both parties, of both constituencies. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you've really kind of nailed the underlying tone and theme here. It really is about collaboration and mutuality.
Hmm.
It's got to be reciprocal in order for any kind of growth or development or relationship in general
Hmm.
to sustain itself. So, what I would typically coach someone to do is to acknowledge right from the get-go the needs of the business,
Right.
because that's part of, demonstrating the business savvy and the maturity that is required for a next level role, is to say, I get it. I understand that this is our mission, and here's how the role that I'm currently doing, this project management, program management function, fits into that. I absolutely see the criticality of that. And I want to support you in the organization and continuing our excellence in that regard.
Hmm.
So really letting folks know. And I'm thinking about, like, in your case, when you went and asked for help,
Right.
what if you had said, I know that the XYZ client is our top revenue producing client.
Hmm.
And that really hits the bottom line and funds so much of the work that we're doing. And I'm concerned that without some specific support, we may not be able to continue to do that. That acknowledgement of the business reality becomes really key. And then the other thing is not just leaving it at that to say, okay, so boss, what are you going to do about this?
Right.
Because managers are so darn busy now. I mean, you probably remember early in my career, managers only managed people. That's all they did. That was
Right.
their full-time job. And now they've got a whole full-time job. And oh, by the way, you got a staff of 20 or 30 or 40 on top of it. It's an untenable situation in most cases. And so to expect that a manager is going to be able to come up with all the solutions sets us up for something less than success. And so acknowledging the business reality and also acknowledging, I know you're really busy. I've been doing some thinking about it. And here are 2 or 3 concrete ways that I think we could start to move in
Hmm.
the direction of me doing some social media. Maybe I pop in on Saturdays when the rest of the staff is off and answer some of, and engage with users on the various platforms. Something really concrete. So it takes the cognitive load off the manager to come up with the solution, and makes it easier for the manager to say, oh, okay, well, that's a good idea. Or, well, not exactly that, but at least we're not, working with a blank slate. How about we tweak this, tweak that? Here we've got a solution together.
I think what you've described is very sound. And I'm wondering if the manager then has to, I hate the term social worker, but be a little more intentional about the meta perspective of that conversation to say, okay, EJ, I get what you're saying. So let's frame your need and my need a little differently, which is to say, I see value in the channels that you want to own here. How can we use those to fulfill or overcome the deliverables we need to make in this business? Maybe the social media aspect extends out that program management that EJ's doing, and then EJ can say, okay, I get it. I'll come back to you and show you the delta. I'll show you how if we do certain things, it extends out the program management that we want to do, and it generates more revenue, and it helps us increase um, our earnings per share if we're a public company.
Yeah.
And here's the most important thing: you will retain me longer. Your investment in me will be better. My lifetime value as a member of your team will extend further.
Yeah. Love it. And it really focuses on the win-win, the reciprocal, the mutuality dimension of all of this. And you bring up the issue of retention, and
Mm-hmm.
managers, leaders, they are keenly aware of this after the
Mm-hmm.
Great Resignation. Folks are in leadership ranks are being evaluated based upon this. I mean, they're seeing, fortunes rise and fall based upon being able to keep talent. So the retention question is looming large for many leaders. Just a permutation on your theme. So many of the folks that I work with, managers, for instance, don't know what to do with, say, an employee who wants to move into leadership, supervision,
Yeah.
management themselves, and maybe there's not a role or they're not ready for it. And it's a similar sort of situation. How can we allow them to start to preview some of that, to start to build some of those skills while adding value in their current role? And so, I'll frequently coach managers to look around and see, are there things like onboarding new employees, mentoring, coaching newer members of the team that would allow those folks who aspire to doing that full time to sort of test the waters a little bit? Because how many times have people moved into leadership and gone, oh man, what was I thinking of? I don't even like people. Why would I want to have this role?
What you're describing, I think, would be a management petting zoo.
That image.
Test, but you want to test so you say you want management. Do you really want management?
Yeah.
And I think that would be valuable.
Yeah. And it's a way to add value, for that individual on that learning path, to add value as they're testing it out and determining whether it actually works for them.
I want to get to one of the more famous tropes of career management. And as you know, I spent 20 years as a headhunter, so I supported a lot of these tropes. The biggest trope of all is the ladder climb. It goes straight up. But that's not even a thing anymore. I want to bring up Adriana's comment that the career ladder would now look more like a zigzag road. And being able to foresee those ladder moves and stay open to them seems like a big challenge. Do you agree with that?
Totally. Absolutely. In my first book with Beverly Kay, we decided to lose the ladder and introduce the climbing wall as a better metaphor. Because there's a lot more room this way than this way. Lots of ways to get from point A to point B. Sometimes you got to go down to get over, to get up. A lot more of a dynamic sort of zigzaggy, to Adriana's point, sort of focus. And what I would add to Adriana's comment is the other opportunity when we start coming up with alternatives to the ladder is to think about what we can do right where we are. Because so frequently our focus is sort of myopically on that next move, the role, that title. And the truth is, what we've got control of is where we are in the here and now, and what we can do to cultivate the contribution or the competence or the confidence that we need to be ready for that next zig or that zag as well.
Right. EJ, I know you're listening. I know you're watching. I would say to you, take a step back and look at that program manager frame. And before you say, I don't want to do that, think about the power of it, because so much of work now is not about you clocking in and working 80 hours and the boss saying, look at EJ go. Look at that Energizer bunny go. It's really more about how well are you at managing projects and outcomes, because the workplace is really going to be more about that. So there certainly is a lot of value to you to hold on to as much of that program management or project management frame, and don't give it up. I know you want to be a dotted line in the organization, but don't give up what is really a very powerful role within your company, because it is becoming more important in the future of work.
It's a really good point, Dan. Execution has never been more important. And that's really at the heart of program management. And honing those skills in different settings as well will only make EJ more valuable to an organization. And I wonder, too, if there's a way to, again, in the spirit of reciprocity, for EJ to be able to offer some of that program management expertise to the marketing and social media areas. If maybe they don't have the same kinds of rigorous processes and structures and that whatnot, EJ may be able to delve into that space and add a tremendous amount of value by bringing that structure to it.
So I wanted to ask you one more question about promotions are so easy.
All right, give me one.
It seems to be your audience here is really that person in the middle, the manager
Mhm.
who may not have the skill, the experience, or have the agency to affect happiness across all the constituencies that they report to or have report to them. What are some of the keep me up at night points that your readers have made to you that you think are especially illuminating in the frame of future of work and all the changes that have happened in the post-pandemic timeframe?
Yeah, so what's keeping leaders and managers up at night these days is the fact that there's still a pervasive assumption that everybody wants a promotion, that that's the end game.
Right.
There aren't enough of them go around. And so managers and leaders feel like they don't have the ability to take the actions required to maintain the level of engagement, satisfaction, and retention that their
Mhm.
organizations need. And I'd like to put a pin in that and come back to it and talk about why that's a myth and that's not accurate. But it is a pervasive concern on the part of managers and leaders. There's also a real concern about what remote and hybrid configurations mean for career development.
Yeah.
Managers are keenly aware, in many cases, of the tendency toward proximity bias and
Mm.
perhaps leaning toward favoring those who are co-located with whom they spend more time. What does that mean for equity and opportunity for those who aren't in the workplace? And then it's the broader upskilling and reskilling that we're seeing the need to accomplish. The Institute for the Future of Work identified that 85% of the jobs we'll be doing in 2030 haven't been invented yet.
That's right.
The workplace is changing so fast. You look at how quickly AI has gone from, science fiction to daily use in the case of some jobs. Things are moving really fast, and figuring out how do we reskill and upskill staff so that they're prepared, that we're looking around the corner, anticipating what's next and being ready to meet those challenges. I would say those are the three things I hear most.
The upskilling and reskilling part is so mission critical to the workplace right now because we are dealing with constant threats and constant changes. And I would add to this that any successful company will have done at some point across a 7-year span reinvented themselves,
Mhm.
reestablished their unique value proposition, perhaps even realign their marketplace because everything changes.
Yes.
And, going back to my time as a recruiter, again, it goes back a while, but over 20 years, little changed in the respect that hiring managers wanted all their incoming talent to check all the boxes.
Mm.
And why was that? If they were going to spend a lot of money on the fee, they didn't want to additionally spend money on upskilling
Mm.
and reskilling or further skilling.
Mhm.
That's changed.
Mhm.
And if you can't accept that now, buy Julie's book because it's really important that you reframe yourself for a successful workplace. Julie, this has been so much fun. I have one more before I get to my final question to you. I want to ask you where our listeners and viewers can find you on social media so that they A, can learn more about you, and B, buy this amazing book.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. So I'm on LinkedIn as Julie Winkle Giulioni. I think I'm the only one in there under that name. On Twitter, it's Julie_WG, and I've got a website at Julie Winkle Giulioni as well. I'd love to interact with your listeners and viewers and answer more of their questions.
So now we get to our final question. What's your work fit, Julie? What attribute, condition, experience, place, or state of mind makes work a part of your day doing many meaningful and wonderful things and not the all-consuming day? What's your work fit, Julie?
So I hope it's okay if I have two answers for this.
Absolutely.
I actually could go on for another half an hour on this topic. The two things that really strike me as differentiating my experience and my relationship with work are, first, my ability to use my signature strengths every day. The days when I am doing what I do best, when I'm in that flow state, when I'm just feeling that sense of, this is how it's supposed to be. Those are the days that really strike me as being the most satisfying and integrated into my whole life. And then the other thing, the other dimension of that, and I think it's probably not separate from, but feeds into, is I need to feel like I'm making a difference, or at least making progress. And making a difference doesn't have to be, solving world hunger,
Right.
but just even making a small difference, offering a suggestion that makes life easier for someone, coaching someone so that they feel a little bit more confident in moving forward in a particular direction, or just feeling like I've made one molecule of progress. It's those days where you're just treading water and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, that make you wonder why you're doing this stuff. And yet when you feel that sense of, oh, okay, I was there and now I'm here, we're moving in the right direction.
Julie Winkle Giulioni, you are a gift. Thank you so much. May we invite you back on the show at a future date to continue this conversation? Because I feel like we could go on for hours.
I would love it, Dan. You give me the day and time and I'll be there with bells on.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you next week, everyone.